Welcome to the Win, Make, Give Wealth Series. This is Ben Kinney. I am joined here with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart.
That's us.
Hey.
That's us, Bob.
Hello, Chad. Hi.
Bob, how are you?
Today, we are diving in to the Wealth Series section called Reality Check.
Yes.
This may be no big deal to some of you, and it might be a big, gigantic wake-up call for you to understand where are you actually standing at this moment.
Excellent point.
We need to understand the financial position that we are in, whether or not it ends up being good news or bad news. We need to have the news.
That's a great point.
I just open up my app on my phone and look in my bank account. Like, isn't that at the end of the day just how much money's in my bank? That's what most people probably do for their financial reality check, right? They're just like, how much money do I have left at the end of the day?
At different points in my life, my strategy was put in my PIN and pray that the charge went through. Other points in my life, it was get home from work and hope that the power was still on or the water hadn't been turned off.
Yeah, my reality check for years was counting the money that was in the little cookie jar because I was a waiter. So we just came home with tips, put all the cash in the cookie jar, and you hoped you had enough money to get you through.
Yeah, Coinstar was our friends
Yes.
at certain points. So here's the deal. We don't care what you learn today, what the outcome is. That's not important. It could be bad.
Yep.
It could be good. It could be no big aha to you. But what we care is you know exactly where you're at, because the rest of the Wealth Series is going to be about getting you to where you want to go.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone, I can speak on behalf of the three of us, I believe, in this situation. There was at least in each of our lives at one point a time when doing the reality check scared the living crap out of us because there was probably a very large negative number in front of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? The numbers that came from it.
In more than one time in my life.
Right. Income was very little. Expenses were very high. But because we did the reality check, we were able to understand where we were so we could go forward from there.
Just to be clear, everybody, you are taking financial advice from a group of guys that I guarantee we've all bounced a check. True?
I don't remember writing that many, but I'm sure I bounced a check somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had negative marks on our credit report.
Amen. Yes.
Yes. That's a fact.
Yeah. we ended up with more debt than we had ever planned to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've had negative balances in our bank accounts or close to it.
Yes.
I might one time have had a bank just say, I'm not doing business with you.
I started adding up the amount of like late or like overdraw fees in 1 year. And it was like my car payment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I just had all the late fees back, I could probably be, debt free on another property.
It actually reminds me of my years of renting movies from Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, the amount of late fees that I had there too.
Yeah, might as well have just kept the movies.
Anyway, today, in order to get ready, really what we need is we need you to take a few minutes and print out your most recent bank statement, your most recent credit card statements,
Yep.
your documents from your student loan, your mortgage statements.
Yep.
Just gather the financial mail and information.
Your stock portfolio. I mean, even things that aren't just payments as you're thinking about as you're listing off some of those things.
Yeah, retirement accounts.
Yeah.
We're not going to use all that in this particular section, but it's going to prep you for one coming up really, really shortly.
Yes.
So as you gather all of your credit card statements and your bank statements, get them all together and just follow along with us today, because we are going to talk about our expenses and how they become optional or required. We're going to talk about our debt, and we're going to talk about the current situation we have with our income.
Now, we're going to get them into some other things as we go along, especially people who went through the first Wealth Series. You'll recognize some of the things that we're going to talk about. We'll get to the red light, green light or highlight or exercise. We will get to increasing your income. Here, we're just doing that reality check. You know, Ben, as we were getting ready to do this one, I found this quote from author Lev Grossman. And I just thought this was a powerful one because so many of us, when it comes to wealth, needed to hear this. That says, if there's a single lesson that life teaches us, it's that wishing doesn't make it so. And I think a huge chunk of our audience, that's probably their wealth plan.
Yeah.
Wishing is going to make it so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pray.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. So today, let's talk a little bit about, Chad, you and Bob, maybe you found some stats for us
We did.
of what's going on with expenses, incomes, that kind of stuff in America, or Canada or the world, wherever you all are taking this. We'll reference the best we can.
Before we get into some things in detail, Bob, you've got in front of you right there a stat that you wanted to share when it comes to
look, and
expenses.
this gets to, I mean, maybe not even the reality check as much as just why we're here doing the wealth series in general, which is in 2022, in September of 2022, Lending Club put out a report that said 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, which is staggering. And that's up, by the way, over last year from 57%. So in the last year, there's another, 6% of the population that's now living paycheck to paycheck. The really staggering component of that, you guys, is almost half. 49% of people that make over $100,000 a year continue to live paycheck to paycheck. Like, that to me is staggering in many ways.
You know, I think it's interesting when I asked Bob for a great stat that I know he has in front of him, and then he gives me another one that he had somewhere else in front of him.
Yeah, right.
We love Bob, right?
Yeah.
Ben, here's the stat we were looking at too, that American households spend an average of $61,334 per year, or broken down, that's $5,111 per month. That's 82% of our after-tax income. And most households will have the same major expenses, which is housing, transportation, taxes, and food, which actually makes up 78% of our budget. I think it was really interesting. We were looking at some numbers. You had us looking at some numbers for expenses. And you could probably guess that 2019 to 2020, a lot of our expenses dropped in many categories because of COVID.
Yep.
Right? All of a sudden, alcohol, actually, it went down. Not because we didn't stay home and drink a lot. It's because we didn't go out drinking as much. And our entertainment went down.
The keynote is it's cheaper to drink at home.
Correct.
Okay.
Take note of that as you're doing this. Right? A lot of our things went down for expenses. But then in 2021, we saw a big rebound on a lot of expenses. Food, our expenses all went up across the country. Alcohol, beverages, again, because we started to get out again.
Transportation up again.
Correct. A lot of things are going back up. And as we said here, 82% of our after-tax income is being spent on average by more people. And Bob and I were discussing beforehand, you made an interesting point about that, right? If we're only spending 82% of our after-tax income, why are so many people in debt?
Or living paycheck to paycheck, or...
Sounds like there should be money left over somewhere.
You know what's interesting there, too, as we look at those, Chad, as you look at the stat, so it was 78% of that is spent on required. Like, these aren't optional expenses. It's not optional to do food. It's not optional to do transportation for most people, right? If we have a job or...
Correct.
It's not optional to do housing.
Or pay your
taxes. There's only like 4% of that spending that actually comes up as optional, which to me seems pretty crazy. And we're gonna dive in here today about the difference between optional and required expenses.
We did the Wealth series at the start of 2020.
Yeah.
And it was a hit. Tens of thousands of people went through the Wealth series just in the first 30 days. And yet we decided to re-record the Wealth series. For those of you joining for the first time, this is part 2.0. 2.0.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. When you showed the changes to me in the cost of things,
yes,
I knew that my friends and family, my neighbors, my employees, my partners, right? The people in our community have to be hurting because from 2020 to 2021, the cost of food overall went up 13.4%.
Right.
The cost of food away from home, 27.6%. The cost of alcohol, 15.9%. The cause of housing, 5.6, which, by the way, that was not true if you bought a house because the cost of buying a house went up even more dramatic. Transportation, 11.6% increase just over 1 year. Apparel, 22.3%. Entertainment, 22.7.
You know what I like in entertainment there, Ben? Pet toys, hobbies, and playground equipment went up almost 13% right there.
Gas up 37% year over year.
This is just 2020 to 2021.
You notice the only expense that came down? There's only one expense on that list that has a negative number beside it that it actually came down from 2020 to 2021. Isn't that interesting?
That is funny.
Right? Bob, did you notice it?
Education, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Only one that came down. Less people went back to college.
I mean, in theory, like as prices get tighter and it becomes more, that's an optional expense for many people, right? It's not one they'd need to have to option out.
And I think as of COVID, where a lot of kids maybe didn't go back to school.
Or maybe people did more things virtual.
Correct. And education costs less.
Cheaper cost. Well, anyway, in 2022, as all of you have known, if you've not been under a rock, there's this word that everybody uses called inflation.
Dun, dun, dun.
And inflation has been at really almost an all-time high.
Right.
At least for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yep.
And inflation means the cost of goods and services are more expensive today than they were a year ago.
Right.
And that has been 8%, 8.5%. And that's an average, meaning some things, as we just showed you, went up 20, 30, 15%. And some things went up 5, 6, 3%.
Yeah. And that was 2021's numbers compared to 2020. I'm going to look forward in a scary way to see what 2022's numbers are when the year is over and they finally can release those numbers on how much it went up due to inflation.
So if you feel like things are tighter now than they've been in a really long time, one thing to understand is it may not necessarily be your fault. You may be living the same exact disciplined life than you lived 2 years ago.
Yep.
But things are changing and the cost of goods and services are increasing greater, most likely, than your family's annual income.
Right.
Household income.
Which is why the Wealth Series 2.0 is here for you.
Part deux.
Part deux. No, I'm calling it 2.0. I'm sticking with that.
You can't do the deux.
I can't do the deux well enough.
That was pretty good, though. That was pretty good.
I like saying deux. Anyway, if you took the very first Wealth Series, go back to the workbooks and the notes, and when you're done doing this exercise, compare it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
See how your expenses that are required and your expenses that are optional changed just over a 2-year period, so you can go back and reflect on, are my habits changing? Did I get a little bit more loose on what I buy and what I spend and so on? Now, those little tiny luxuries or little tiny additional expenses, they can cause some problems.
Yes, they can.
In fact, a really, really long time ago,
A really smart man.
he was named, Bob, you may not know this, but it's one of the greatest names of all time. It's a powerful name. It's a strong name. His name was Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
He said a lot of things. One of my favorites, by the way, he said, we are all worms, but I do believe I am a glowworm. Yeah, but this is not the quote that
I'd have to go look that one up. I'd have to go look
We're
that
all
one up.
worms, but I do believe I am a glowworm.
That's not the quote you were going to give us today.
No, but what he did say was, beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship.
Yeah, that's a great reminder.
It's like dying by 1,000
Cuts. Yes.
paper cuts.
Ugh.
Little, tiny, small, painful things that eat away. So far today, we've bored you with a bunch of stats. We've depressed you with the current state of the world. We've asked you to gather your bank statements, your credit card statements, and all these things.
Yep.
We're going to make one last request. When you signed up for the Wealth Series, you should have been emailed a packet for today's session.
Yes.
If you didn't, please go to winmakegive.com/wealth. Make sure you register so you can download our workbooks. And with our workbooks, you get access to a bunch of resources.
Yep.
The resources will have printed workbooks, like we discussed, but also some spreadsheets and tools that you can use to make this exercise today go easier. Lastly, at the end of the workbook are going to be a couple of questions. We're calling it a test.
Ooh.
And if you want to participate in our prizes, our cash giveaway, this amazing Win, Make, Give podcast competition.
We've told you we were giving Ben's money away.
Ooh, let's do it.
I thought it was our money.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, our money.
Wait, it's our money? Oh, that
It's the
changes
income.
things.
It's a
That
percentage
changes.
of the income, Bob.
What is going to happen is if you answer all the questions correctly, and at the end of the entire series, when we send it out, you're going to have an opportunity to win big. But only if you go through every session, do the workbook, and answer a couple of these questions. So if you're going to participate in that, make sure you go to winmakegive.com/wealth, download the workbooks, take notes. You're going to need them for the very last session.
Yes.
All right. Let's get into the actual reality check section. The first section is best organized by taking your credit card statements and your bank statements, and we're going to do the first of two different types of highlighter experiments.
Okay.
In this one, we are going to go through our credit card statements and our bank statements with a green highlighter. You can choose your own color, but I like green.
Okay.
And maybe a yellow highlighter.
Okay.
And the green one, you're going to go through and you're going to mark what expenses are required.
Okay.
Give me, Chad,
Yep.
some examples of some required expenses that somebody might decide. Now, you don't have to.
Yep.
Might decide that they're required.
Yeah, and I was going to ask the same thing. Say, let's give them a list of these things. So, Bob, let's go back and forth. Let's challenge each other on this. All right. So, I'd say your mortgage, your rent, whatever where you're living, that's going to be a required expense.
Yeah. I would say utilities, maybe things like water, power, garbage, potentially like internet, cable. Although I guess we could debate whether cable was a required or an optional expense, right? But your cell phone bill, maybe, Chad.
Okay. I'm going to say credit card payments, debt payments, of course, that you have. If you've got any loans, anything like that, that's going to be a required expense. You've got to be making those payments. Give me the next one, Bob.
Car payment. If you have a car payment, you probably need that thing.
Got a car payment, you're going to have car insurance. Right?
Insurance.
Now, car insurance will also lead me to other insurances, right? Maybe it's not a required expense, yet health insurance probably should be, and life insurance probably should be a required expense.
Gas. I mean, if I have a car and I'm going to pay insurance on it, I got to get places with it. So gas would probably be one.
We haven't said one of Ben's favorites yet. I think the next one that I'm going to throw out here is probably going to be one of Ben's favorite, required expenses, and that's food.
I do love snacks.
Right. Ben is a foodie, and he does love his snacks.
Turns out you need to eat to live.
Yes, that is true. We do.
What else?
Either under health. We said insurance for health, so I'm going to say medical, things like that. Bob, anything else?
I mean, look, some of you, it's not in my house, but I know I had my in-laws over last night, and my father-in-law just had his dog at the vet.
Oh, you
If you got pets, right? They're family, yeah. So those are required expenses.
Should we say kids then? If we're gonna say pets, I mean, we didn't really say the kids' expenses because
Yeah,
of course there are expenses. The kids aren't making money yet.
We have a boy in Montessori school. That's a required expense for us. There's no, he's going to daycare, Montessori, something, right? So yeah, that childcare expense for us is a required expense.
Okay. And there's going to be others, Ben. We don't need to keep seeing and playing the game. And as you said, even some of our required that we just listed here, I think could be a conversation like cable. I've cut cable, right? I mean, so many of our listeners have probably cut cable. I've only chosen to, and do you have to have internet? I don't know. I mean, yes, you probably do depending on our jobs. We do, right? And we're glad you do because you're downloading and listening, but maybe you're just going to the near Starbucks and using their internet or something along those lines. But overall, we consider these required expenses.
The only other one that I would add is if over time, recently or in the past years, I've ever personally loaned you money,
pay it back.
Those are also required.
Yeah, we said loans and debt and things like that. So yeah, if you need to be paying Ben Kinney back, I'm good. Bob, you good on your payments to Ben?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
You
making
know,
sure.
there's
Ish.
like as we start to look to the optional,
He's paying you in
as we start
Bitcoin.
to look into the optional, like there's a whole bunch over there that potentially are required. Like for me, for example, clothing. For me personally, not required. But I have a 5 and a 6-year-old, and those boys are grown. And like every year, we know there's going to be clothes that need to get bought or purchased for them, and that's a required expense for us, right?
Yeah,
No,
I guess.
no, not in the way that we describe it.
Okay.
Right.
Because when you look at the workbook, it's going to say required is expenses you cannot live without. I'm
Okay.
thinking like Naked and Afraid, The Alone Show. Like you need food, shelter, water. Like you have to decide what is, if the world is ending, what is your absolute required,
Yep.
and then you got your optional. And our definition, Bob, of optional is things you could go without in an emergency. In an emergency, your kids could wear the same clothes because I know you and me wore the same pair of shoes for a year
Well,
or
I mean,
two
that's
every
true,
year.
but mom still had to buy a new pair once a year, and we still did. So I mean, there is some like I can't, I could do that for a while.
I'll bet you know somebody who's got kids that are a year or two older than yours that you could end up getting from them and passing down if
emergency?
we had
Okay.
to in an emergency, right?
So optional to me is that next level of needed expenses. And then there's a one after that, which is really luxury or abundance or things that we enjoy that we're not talking about today.
Right.
All I want us to calculate is the total of your required expenses and then the total of your monthly optional expenses.
Optional expenses, like you're saying, things that we could do without, like
Entertainment.
yeah, going to the movies and
Yeah.
watching certain things,
Clothing, except for Bob.
eating out and
Snacks.
Shoes not optional for me, by the way. but
trips, Bob. Bob,
Trips.
maybe get rid of some of those trips you like to
Not as
go
many
on.
Disneylands.
Books.
man.
We could go to library.
Yep, we sure could, or just go see Ben.
Cut down on some hobbies or get some cheaper ones.
Okay. Investing like into our 401k and our future
If we
savings.
had to,
If I
we could
had
stop
to,
contributing.
correct, right?
Subscriptions.
Or donating some of that
Yeah.
money to charities that I do if I really had to.
Yeah. Education.
Yeah, and we
These-
saw that one.
These are optional.
Okay.
I want you to go through, and so far in your credit card statements and your bank statements,
Yep.
you're going to have green for required,
Okay.
yellow for optional,
Okay.
and the rest that isn't colored is excess. It's things that we enjoy, we use, we did, it happened one off, whatever that might be.
Okay.
So, everybody, if you're following along, you're going to fill this out in either the spreadsheets that we gave you,
Yep.
or you're going to handwrite them into the workbook that you downloaded and printed out.
Okay.
When you're done with that, you're going to add it up. And as you add that up,
I'm going to get a total of my required monthly and my optional monthly. You want us to figure this out annually, though.
well, when you do get it for your month,
Right.
all you got to do is multiply it by 12.
Right. That's the easy part.
And then you're going to know how much of your income
Yep.
are you having to put towards required
Yep.
or towards optional.
Right.
And as silly as this exercise may be,
Yep.
I'm telling you, anybody that's ever done this comes away with some pretty massive ahas and observations and things they didn't realize. Either they're required or much higher than they thought. Their optionals are a little excessive,
Yes.
right?
They justify the optionals. That's what ends up happening, right? We just moved into a new place, as you know, the audience knows. So we'll just, we need that, right? Or, we need this around that. They're really optional expenses that if in an emergency, we probably could have waited to do.
Yeah. On the bottom of that sheet, once you've totaled your required and your optional,
Yep.
you're going to add it all together.
Okay.
And that's your actual annual expenses. Really, in our mind, required to continue to live the lifestyle that you live today.
So what I would know is I would know two things. I would know I need X to be able to just live, and I would need X plus Y to be able to live with the lifestyle that I want based on today because it's got those optional expenses in there. And now I know how much I need every year just to live.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the delta between those two numbers
Yep.
and what you make annually,
That's the difference for those of you who are going, what's he mean when he says the delta? Yep.
that difference
Yep.
is where you're going to realize that you are spending on stuff that you don't need
Right.
or that you've been saving
Okay.
or that you're using to pay down debt quicker.
Yep.
But we got to know this benchmark.
Got it.
Step 2 in the workbook.
Here, real quick, before you move to step 2, because when Aaron and I did this the first time, we missed a pretty major expense that we only pay every 6 months. Right? Our car insurance. We'd gone back. I think we collected like 3 months worth of bank statements, and we kind of gone back through them because we wanted to get some averages on things like food, right? Some months it's a little higher, some months a little lower. And we were scared of taking like a 1 month snapshot and so we'd gone back 3 months, but that 3 months just didn't happen to include in it our car insurance. And so it was something that we just kind of, we forgot. And later we were like, oh gosh, yeah, that. Because some of these things, if we don't have it exactly on the form, you might not go looking for it. Like we have insurance on there. And so we've done our house insurance. And anyway, so you might take a little bit longer look at the arc of it if you were really wanting to dial in and get yourself a little bit more specific numbers, right? Because if you just did 1 month and you took a month where maybe you'd gone out a few extra times for, to eat out or something,
it's a good
might
point.
Look a little broader.
It's a good point.
Yeah. Good aha.
Yep.
Okay, back to my original point. Step 2 of the reality check, Bob.
Here it is.
We are going to write down a list of all of our debts.
Yes. Ugh.
Debts are obligations, liabilities, things that we need to pay. For instance, credit cards,
Ben Kinney back.
pay me back,
Yes, right.
real estate loans,
Car loans.
the IRS,
Okay. Student loans.
student loans,
Maybe.
lines of credit, money owed to parents,
Yep.
back bills, medical bills, any of those things, that's actual debt. When you fill out the debt tracker, which is step 2 of the workbook, you are going to write down 3 things. 1, the balance. What is the total amount that you owe to each one of these debtors?
Okay.
Number 2, what's the interest rate
Yes.
that you pay?
Oof.
And then number 3, what is your minimum monthly payment?
Okay.
So we're going to go through and write, hey, I have a credit card. It's at 9% interest. My minimum payment based on my current balance is $120 a month.
Yep.
My current balance is $3,000 or whatever that would
You
be.
have 9% interest credit card? I feel like that's pretty good. Is that good?
No, it's not good.
No, it's not.
No, it's not good. But
I thought credit cards were like 26%.
There are
credit
plenty of
cards
them
go up
that
to
are-
like 18, 17.
Yes.
Some states have usury. You can't even charge over a certain amount. But many of us back in the day when I used credit cards more, I would switch from credit card to credit card to get the lowest possible rate.
Yeah.
But we
Pay Peter
digress.
to PayPal or whatever that expression is, right? Keep moving the money from
Yeah.
one credit card to the next and hold them off as long as
Rob
possible.
Peter to pay Paul.
There you go.
You're going to do this for your credit cards, your auto loans,
Okay.
your student loans, your lines of credit, your real estate, your other loans, all of that.
Should we have a category on there that says Ben Kinney loans?
Yeah,
for-
we should put
put
me
Ben
on
Kin-
there.
Yeah, put Ben Kinney on there.
Me on there. Yeah. At the bottom, you're going to add up the total of your monthly payment. What is your debt obligations on a minimum payment basis every month? You're also going to write down the total balance of all of your liabilities or your debt. We're going to need this number in another section of the Wealth series when we talk about net worth.
Yes.
So make sure you do this. And then with your highlighter, I would like you to highlight your lowest interest rates in green and your highest interest rates in red. Because that might be something that you're going to think about changing, negotiating, or working on going forward after you take the time to do this.
Or it might help you figure out the order to pay these off in.
Yeah.
Right. There are many philosophies out there. We won't get into all of them right now. There are philosophies on how to get out of debt and how to pay them. That might be one of the ways you want to know. And if you have them shaded from green to red, it'll be easy to help you identify.
When I started doing this exercise, to be fully transparent, I was missing payments. I had 30, 60, 90-day lates on my credit. I owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to different institutions and places. It wasn't pretty. But when I got done doing this, I felt relieved because I knew exactly where I was and what I could do about it. For instance, I started paying down some of my credit cards based on the highest interest rate first.
Yep.
Whereas prior, I was just paying the minimum payments, and if I had extra, I'd randomly choose one,
Right.
not realizing how much more it was costing me by not thinking about that simple little change.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay, so Ben, you've covered expenses and you've covered debt. Now, you covered all the negative-y stuff, right? I mean, it's not negative in the sense, it's reality. It is what it is. We've put ourselves in that position. Yet we look at all these expenses as money going out. Debt is money I owe and money going out. We also should, for the reality check, be aware of the money coming in.
that would be our income.
Okay, so that's going to be the next thing we're going to be documenting on this is our income, right?
Before we do,
Okay.
Bob found a stat about consumer debt. What'd you find there, Bob?
In September of 2022, the estimated consumer debt in the United States is $16.5 trillion.
Put your pinky by your mouth and say $1 trillion.
I mean, trillion with a T, just in case I mean, that's insane. But on average, across the United States, the average, American adult has
Consumer,
consumer, $96,371 of debt.
Unbelievable.
Up from
90,460 in 2021. So I mean, that's like a 5% jump in the amount of debt every average person's holding in 1 year.
I don't know. You're the expert on it, but look, consumer debt. That they're talking about consumer debt. I have very little consumer debt, thankfully, right? Because of the lessons of the Wealth series and of Ben over years. Bob, I'm going to guess you probably have very little consumer debt.
Yeah, correct.
Ben, you probably have very little consumer debt. You've got smart investing debt. You've probably got, guys, if we're all well below that number, that means a lot of people are well above that number if that's the average.
No.
That's amazing.
Let's not pass judgment.
No.
Because there are points in times when mine was way worse than that.
I've been there. I've been
sure.
around that number.
Yeah, I've been over that number
I've been
myself.
hundreds of
I was one of
thousands
those
over.
people.
Yeah, I was bringing the average up.
Yep.
So no judgment.
No.
But what this tells us is what we need to do in the next step to figure out how are we going to handle our expenses and pay down our debt. There isn't a lot of choices other than make more money or marry super rich.
Yeah.
I think both of them are valid plans,
Okay.
right? Just my dad says.
I noticed you didn't put the lottery in there as one of those valid plans.
Lottery's the third one.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Lottery's the third one, yeah. Marry super rich.
Or find that lottery ticket.
Or win the lottery.
Yeah. Okay.
If not, we're all going to revert back to what our plan is,
Yes.
which is make more money.
Right.
So reality step 3 is analyzing our current income.
Okay.
What we would like you to do is inside the workbook, we want you to write down your annual salary or your annual income from your primary job.
Right. You might not have a salary, so just whatever you make over the course of a year on average right now. Okay.
Take where you're at for the year, divide it by the number of months that you've had, or take what you did last year, right?
Okay,
Do the math.
Yep.
Figure out roughly what are you making annually.
Got it.
Next, do you have any other income? It could be
A paper route?
paper route.
Sure. They
Could
still
drive-
have paper routes?
Could drive Uber after,
Yep.
right? Could drive Uber during the day and do something else after.
Yep.
You could have alimony. You could have child support. You could have won the lottery and got paid payments. You could have sold a book at some point and you
Yep.
get royalties. Maybe you're a child TV star and you get money from your appearance in Red Dawn
Okay.
and the rad BMX racing movie. Any other income that you have that doesn't fit under the other categories, business profits. Maybe you own a business
Yep.
and you pay yourself a salary, but on top of that, your business makes more than that. So you have some profits that you could spend as well.
So if you pay yourself a salary, that's going to either be your annual salary or it could be other income if it's a secondary stream that's coming in. Yet there might still be business profit, which is separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Any rents that you receive, not pay.
Yeah. This is
So,
income.
Yeah, you rent a,
Airbnb, got an investment property with a tenant,
you rent a bedroom out.
bedroom.
You
Yep.
rent a house out.
Rent your car.
You have a tiny home in the backyard and you Airbnb it.
We had one of our we own a condo in Seattle, and the guy that rented the condo, and then we rented the parking spot out for the year that guy lived there to somebody else. So we had rent coming in from our parking spot.
Okay. So anything we can rent.
Investments or dividends that pay income, not grow,
Right.
but actually distribute some sort of cash that you could spend.
Okay.
Or if you've loaned people money and they pay you interest, that could be income. When you're done, you'll have added up all your different sources of income annually. And at the bottom of the worksheet, you're going to add up your annual income. I want you then to go to the other box and divide by 12
Okay.
and to figure out what your monthly income is.
Got it.
This in itself is a reality check. What we've identified is, what does it cost you just to live? What does it cost you to live on top of that? You're optional. What is the total amount of debt? And how much do you make as a family or as an individual in income? Take your monthly optional and monthly required expenses and subtract it from your current income.
Right.
That will either be a negative,
Yep.
a break even, or a positive. If it's a positive, that positive amount is what you have available to save, invest, pay down debt, or
Give.
give away.
Yeah.
This is step one, truly, of getting financially sound. And it's the most important step because all of this sets you up to better understand the rest of the Wealth series.
We have to know where we are to be able to figure out where we're going to go. And that's what you're helping us figure out during this episode.
Exactly.
You know, Will Rogers, great, right? Will Rogers always has some great quotes. And Will Rogers said, "Too many people spend money they earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like." Right? So folks, you might look at some of those optional expenses and start to realize, wait a minute, I'm buying things I didn't really want to impress people I don't even like. Do they need to be on there?
That is so funny.
Right. All right. So that being said, Ben, we want to drive them. They want to go to winmakegive.com/wealth to make sure they've got the workbook. They should have received it in an email already because there's a test in there. There are questions in there. There's also fill in the blanks to help you with these exercises in there to make sure that they're, one, doing their reality check, and two, putting themselves in a position to win some opportunities that we'll be giving away at the end of the Wealth series.
Don't cheat yourself by not doing the homework and not printing out your statements. Do the work and it'll pay off. The rest of the Wealth series, I promise you, is going to blow you all away.
Yeah, there's a big difference between listening to the Wealth series and like taking the Wealth series, right? The taking part is where you're actually engaged in those workbooks and you're going to figure out in this first step where you sit today.
There is so many people from the first Wealth series that will tell you how important taking the Wealth series is, as Bob just said, has made a difference for them and can for you as well. Don't just listen like everybody else, fill in the one or two questions, the quiz to attempt to win. Do the work. You will win no matter what. Don't forget to join us in our Facebook group, Win, Make, Give, where we will continue the conversations after each of these episodes. And make sure you're here for the next episode. Invite someone, bring them with you. They can always catch up and make sure that they are changing their future to leave a legacy worth leaving behind. Until our next episode, as always, do good.